Hello and welcome back to another episode of Two Sisters of a Certain Age, Conversations with a Therapist
and a Doctor.
I'm your co-host, Judy Grant, licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I'm your co-host, Dr. Sophia Grant, board-certified pediatrician and board-certified child abuse pediatrician.
So, Candy, we're just kind of coming off of the holidays. By the time this airs, holidays will have passed.
Yeah.
But you just sent your baby back to Howard for what?
Her last semester.
Yay.
Her last semester. I have never been so happy to send a huge chunk of change to any institution. But I am so incredibly proud of her. And I tell people that when she graduates, Howard is just going to be an empty shell because she has squeezed out every opportunity available.
Mm-hmm.
In a few weeks, she's going for her third study abroad opportunity with her classics major. So I'm just absolutely thrilled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't believe she's almost done. Like, where have those years gone?
I know.
But here we are. Here we are.
So today we have an HBCU grad, Spelman graduate, Billé Frazier. We went to high school together. And Billé went to Spelman from LA and she never came back. She got her master's at Georgia State. And Billé is a master coach, a success coach, and hypnotherapist.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that.
And her area of expertise is in leadership and personal development. She has a coaching agency called Follow the Lead Her, Leadher, and she wants to help women maximize physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of their lives and reignite the subconscious and the conscious. And I thought Billé would be a great guest to have on because she addresses some of the negative self-talk that women have. So welcome to the show, Billé. We're thrilled to have you.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you,
nice to have you with us today.
Thank you. Glad to meet you, Judy. I've heard so much about you.
Yeah. And Billé was saying we sound just alike. I don't think so, but I hear it enough.
I do not hear it, but people have been saying it our whole lives.
Yeah, it's not like the voice, like the tonal voice, but it's the like inflections.
Really?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I know we cough alike. I think my cough sounds like your cough. Anyway, Billé is an HR professional, and I wanted to talk to Billé about being women of a certain age and dealing with maybe re-entering the workforce, changing your career. Judy changed her career.
I did.
To a certain degree. I changed my career. I just did a fellowship and specialized in a different area of medicine. But Billé, how do you approach a middle-aged woman who says, I want to do something new. I want to do something different. I don't feel that my skills are being used maximally in my current position.
Yeah, first I want to say, you say women of a certain age, you're talking about yourself because I'm still 16.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, sorry.
Let's get that clear.
So just speak like people my age and not you. You're speaking as a barely young adult. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, but I mean, I think this is, I think life is interesting because this isn't anything that we were taught, from our parents. We came up during a generation where our parents probably worked one career, maybe two, their entire lives, retired, and that was it. And now I think we're probably the first generation where when we look at our friends, we're not on that same trajectory. We've worked several careers in several companies before we've retired. And so for a lot of women our age, depending on what that career trajectory looks like, you could have been at a company 20 years and progress through different positions at that company. Or you could be someone like myself who has gone from company to corporation, still in HR, but doing different things. So I've been able to increase my skill set, but then I'm not going to be able to retire till I'm like 104. And so, when I start looking for jobs, and now it's I'm very conscious of the words that I use. So I don't like to say that it's difficult. The landscape has changed. Recruiting is broken. When I started in HR 20 something years ago, I actually started off as a recruiter. We didn't have the internet, so we were putting ads in the paper. People were mailing in hard copies of their resume, and we were sending out reject letters and hand signing them. And so now when people look at my signature, they're like, "Oh my God, what is that?" And I was like, "Look, I started off in an organization where we had to sign letters that went out to everybody. And after you sign about 600 letters, your handwriting just starts to look like, let me just make it look like something. As long as I can get the B and the F, you can see that it's a human person." And so now you don't have that, and you don't really have people looking at your resume. You're putting your information through an applicant tracking system, an ATS, that's searching for keywords in your resume. Typically for women as a certain age, we don't go through and update our resume. Now we're at a time where you need to make sure that your resume is applicable to every job that you apply for. And whether that means you have to have 10 different resumes versus, years ago where we could just have one or two, you have to have 10 different resumes, because the ATS system is ranking you based on those keywords in that job description. And depending on what the company, ratio is, if you're not at 80 or 70%, they're not even going to see you. You're not even going to appear in those lists. And so you start getting those automatic emails like 24 hours after you apply. "Thank you, but we're going with another candidate." I think what's most important for me when I'm talking to women around our age, it's about keeping your mindset positive and realizing you only need one. Every no that you get to is getting you closer to the yes that you need. Because it can be disheartening, especially when you look on professional sites like LinkedIn will show you how many people have applied to a role. I have another client, and she says, she doesn't even apply to roles. When she looks and she sees, 100 people have applied, she's like, "I'm not even going to throw my hat in that." And I was like, "But of those 100 people, you don't know how many people they've actually looked at. Yes, 100 people could have applied, but they may have only seen 10 resumes based on their ATS system." And so you can't let those types of things discourage you. So that's kind of what I focus on.
Is there a way to figure out what the ATS is looking for and include that?
Absolutely. It's called ChatGPT. That's the wonderful thing about ChatGPT.
Okay.
There are prompts that you can put in ChatGPT, and you tell ChatGPT to act as a ATS system and review your resume or review the job description and pick out those keywords. There are also different sites. Like one of the sites that I use, I think is called JobScan. And it's a free site where you can actually upload the job description, and then you upload your resume, and it will tell you the percentage that your resume will rank on the ATS system, and it'll give you suggestions for things that you need to change.
Okay. All right. It's been so long since I looked for a job. I don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah. This is new to me. So my son, he's 18 years old and looking for his first little job, right? He's a student, needs a little pocket money. And I say, like, literally yesterday, we drove around to different little places, more like mom and pop sort of places. And I am always saying, in person is best. So they have a face to go with that resume, with that application when they get it. And that's for, a tiny little entry level job,
For retail,
as opposed to, somebody that's in their career. They can't just go and knock on the door of corporation XYZ. So they have to put everything into that resume, which feels to me, it's so awkward because you don't have a name to follow up. You can't call Mrs. Smith and say, hey, have you received my blah, blah, blah. So knowing that Chat GPT and Job Scan can help you take the place of that in-person personalized call, I think is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and we still have in person, but I mean, right now we call it networking. That's the difference.
Yeah.
When
Right.
you're
Yeah.
looking at professional jobs, and I still tell everybody, I don't care what the systems do. I think everyone that I know that has found their next position has been through networking. It's been because they've gone through their network and they found somebody at the company that could pass their resume along and refer them, or they've gone through LinkedIn and done the I forget where it is. On some of the jobs, it will tell you who the poster is. And so you can go ahead and email them directly. I think there's an additional cost for that. People have done that. One of our larger companies here, not going to say their name because they haven't hired me yet. But I mean, I swear, like every time they have a job, and I've been applying to this company probably since I've been out of college, and I'm like, it has to be a cult because I've applied on the website. I've had people refer me as an internal referral, and I've been applying with them so long that I've seen how they've changed their recruiting process. And so now they're doing virtual, well, they make you do a case study first. And then if you pass the case study, you do a recorded video interview. And then if you pass the recorded video interview, then they will bring you on site for an interview and you will meet with, so if I'm applying for an HR position supporting the marketing department, they may have 5 HR positions. They may have one supporting operations. They may have one supporting engineering. They may have one supporting sales. And so you'll interview with all of those people and you don't know which job they're interviewing you for. And then after that, they'll decide if you fit in one of those slots. And so I have not been able to get leeway into that company at all. And I'm like, I swear it's a cult. I don't know how they're hiring people or how they're finding people. So yeah.
It just seems so much harder today.
Oh, it
Yeah, it
absolutely is
does.
harder. I think it's a combination of our system is broken, as well as I think this has probably been the first time in my career where I have seen so many people looking for jobs. And so competition is very heavy, higher than it's been, any other time in my career, which I think is another part of it.
Do you think that people are going to be less likely to hire women of a certain age versus the 22, 23-year-old college graduate? I was speaking with a cousin of ours, and she said that there are people in her role, in her industry, who are being let go because their salary is so high, they can
Absolutely.
hire 2 or 3 people. Do you
Absolutely.
find that to be the case?
Oh,
Does
absolutely.
experience not matter?
Absolutely. I mean, I was in one of those situations as well. So, I know about it exactly firsthand. Um, and it's like mindset is so important because I really believe in energy and like what you believe and put out, that's what you receive. And so if you start telling yourself, they're not going to hire me because I'm too old, then that's what you're going to get back from the universe, and that's what your subconscious is gonna show you. So I'm very careful about trying to make sure that I don't get into that mindset. I try and focus on, and what I focus on with my clients is get them to remember age is just a number, and you were brought to this earth with some type of unique skill. When we're talking about careers, you develop that throughout your career. You have something this company wants. They just don't know it. And so you have to figure out how to package that and pitch that to let them see that you're the best candidate. Yeah, a younger candidate may be better because you can get them for less money. But what advantages do you have in your toolkit that are going to make you better? You have experience on your side, which they don't have. You have wisdom on your side. And I think another thing we have as a certain age, we're probably going to be more readily willing to stay at a company longer than some of these new people are. So yeah, you're able to get someone in younger, for half of what you're paying somebody older, but then they leave after 2 to 3 years. And so
Yeah.
when you
Right,
look at
right.
the cost of what it takes to bring an employee on that's going to stay with
Mm-hmm.
you and leave 2 to 3 years, you might as well have hired, someone older who you're going to get your money back on that employee. So I think it's all about, how you believe in the energy that you put out there. We, as a certain age woman, we just have to figure out how to market that experience and let that company know, like, I am who you need.
Right.
Yeah. You know, so I went back to school, I don't know, 2013
Hmm.
for my MFT, marriage and family therapy.
Okay.
So clearly, I am of a certain age. I was probably among the oldest in my cohort, and I get out and I'm working in the field, and my colleagues are significantly younger than me. Um, and so that was kind of in my mind like, oh, they're younger. That can be attractive for any number of reasons, but also I feel like my career is one that really wants the experience, wants the age, wants the lived history of the clinician, as they're dealing with others. So I found myself in a career where I didn't have to be too worried about that,
Hmm.
because a family doesn't want to come in, and talk to you about their challenges when you're 22 years old and you don't have a
Hmm.
family.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that is definitely a benefit of working within that therapeutic social worker counseling
Hmm.
role. Um, and it's just something I recognize that I didn't have to contend with quite so much.
Yeah, I mean, and
You,
when you look at professions too, because even if we talk about the medical profession, I know that I've had my general practitioner over 30 years. But
mm,
there have
Hmm.
been times where I haven't been able to get in to see him and I have to see another doctor. And if I go in and the doctor is, what I consider fresh out of school, wet behind the ears, I'm like, do you know what you're doing? Like, are you going to be able to diagnose me correctly?
let me tell you something. When I was a new pediatrician and people are entrusting their babies to
Yeah.
my care, and I'm like 27 years old, they're like, "Do you know what you're doing?"
Like you're still a baby.
And yeah, and even like one time when I was still a mother with 3 kids, somebody asked me if I knew I was doing. I don't
Hmm.
know if it was my age or it was a racist thing, but yeah, people tend not to respect um, young physicians, especially if it's like a technical thing. Like if you're 50 versus you're 28, how many of these surgeries have you done?
Right. Exactly.
So I
Hmm.
it's one thing if it's like a physical thing, you're,
Hmm.
but when it's kind of more expertise and experience. Now, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is there still a role for thank you notes after interviews?
Oh,
Remember, we
good
were all
question. Oh,
taught that?
yes, yes.
I didn't hear you repeat your question.
Is there a role for thank you notes
Oh,
after
absolutely.
interviews? Really?
Absolutely. And then, like I said,
Okay.
in where we are today, you have to do everything and anything that you can to set
To
yourself
set yourself
apart
apart.
and
Hmm.
to make them remember you.
Right.
Now, I love a personal handwritten thank you note. We've gotten away from those, but we're
Hmm.
still doing emails.
Uh-huh.
You should always send a thank you note to,
Okay.
Okay.
and unfortunately, you need to send one to everybody that you interviewed with. So
Yes.
if you go through a process where you interview with 10 people, you need to send 10 people an email. And you want to focus your thank you note on something that you all discussed during the interview that matches what you can bring to the role and why you're the right candidate, because that's just going
Hmm.
to be one more thing that's going to be top of mind. Now, if
Right.
during the process, they tell you, oh, you don't have to send me, a thank you note, then don't. But
Hmm.
absolutely send thank you notes. And if
Okay.
the mail wasn't as bad as it is, I would tell people to go back to sending handwritten thank you notes, because there's just something about getting a piece of mail and opening it up and seeing that somebody took
Yes.
the time to write
Yes.
out a thank you note.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm still pretty old school. because the personal letter always feels better than the email. And that
Mhm.
was something I had to adjust to, in my more recent job search,
Mhm.
which was, now several years ago, was email is sufficient.
Yeah, it
It didn't
absolutely is.
feel good, but it's sufficient.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
absolutely is. Absolutely.
So I'm curious because I know that your experience within HR and coaching, um, you work or you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how do you see that playing a role in our recruitment strategy? And I ask this for a couple of reasons. One being that I saw that Facebook, that
Hmm. Yep.
Meta has removed that
One
whole
of many. Yeah.
program
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
from
companies have.
their organization.
Mhm.
And I just don't see, like, I can't understand that because it's a part of American culture. You're going to have a diverse population, period. So what are your thoughts on all of
Yeah, and I was going to say, we don't understand that because we're part of that population. When you're not a part of that
that?
population and you've had that
Right.
Yeah.
privilege all of your life, you don't need it. I've never been a fan of the term DEI.
Mm.
Um, I've always supported that we need to have a diverse workforce and we need to recognize that there are going to be certain positions and roles where we are not going to get a high number of diverse candidates. Like, if you're
Mhm.
talking about engineering and IT, we know typically in engineering and IT, there's not going to be a high number of us. Um, and I don't want to characterize anybody, but we tend to know the demographics that we get in those roles. We're not going to see a lot of women in those areas, and
Mhm.
so what do
Mhm.
we do to make sure that we are? And I'm not saying I don't like to use the word quota because I don't think it necessarily needs to be a one-to-one, but we need to figure out what the diversity pool needs to look like,
Mhm.
and that benefits the entire organization. The one
Yeah.
thing
Absolutely.
that I'm very discouraged with the DEI, because after um, George Floyd, I think is when we saw a big ramp up of
Hmm.
DEI
Yes.
in companies,
Yes.
and so now what we're seeing now, you know, new person going into the White House, and now they're saying, okay, we don't need a lot of these DEI initiatives, and we have a lot of companies who are rolling back and getting rid of people in these roles, but we need it. And so it is a little disheartening to think that, I don't know, because I had a friend of mine and we would always talk about, like, if you could come back in the world as any person, like, who would you come back? And she would always say she wanted to come back as a white male. I never understood that.
Mm.
But, when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, because I will never know what it feels like to be in a position where you have the majority,
Mediocrity is accepted.
that part.
Right.
But, this world caters to you.
Hmm.
You can
Mhm.
have the dumbest white male leading a team of people that have more education and more experience
Yeah.
than him,
Right.
but
Right.
he's put up as a superstar.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't see that in other demographics. And so, but I mean, I love being a Black woman. I wouldn't be anything else. Um,
I mean, if anything, but the hair, you have so many possibilities with the hair,
right, right.
that variety.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah, yeah.
I think the companies who are pulling DEI initiatives out, that says so much about
Oh,
the
it absolutely. It
companies.
says a
Yes.
lot of them. I actually
So,
And
read
it, yeah.
somebody actually posted something earlier today where, because you get the auto-generated email says thanks, but no
Hmm.
thanks. And they said that they keep a list of every job that they apply to. And those companies that don't send them that automatic reply, they don't shop there. They don't support them. And I've never even thought to take it that far because you're thinking, oh, I'm just applying to a job. They can reply or not reply. But when you start getting to the economics of it, and let's say I apply to a company like Google, even though Google doesn't do this, but let's say, you apply to a Google company and they never even send you you never even know the job is
Right,
closed, that
right.
they've never selected you. So yeah, maybe I don't want to support Google. And I've never thought of that. So I read that this morning and I just thought that was just so enlightening. I was like, you know what? I think I may start telling people that. Like, think of those companies who are not replying to you and who are ghosting to you after you take the time to
Yes.
upload your resume. And then even after you upload your resume, you still have to input all the other stuff that's on your resume that they're asking you
Yes.
anyway. And you
Mm-hmm.
spend all of this time for an application, and then they don't even have the courtesy to respond to you and say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. That says something
Right.
about the company, and that's probably not a company where you want to be anyway.
Right.
Right.
So it's the same
And
thing with
Exactly.
DEI. It does say a lot about those companies. So yeah, they weren't really in support
No, it
to
was just
begin
an
with.
act. It was just an
right,
act.
Absolutely.
It
right.
was a
Absolutely.
box to check off. Look, we
Hmm.
have DEI. Oh no, now it's not needed. So,
Right. Absolutely.
I can't meta to do that. And I
yeah.
think you need to, when you're applying for the position, whatever it is, you need to, we've said this before, like you need to interview them. They're
Oh,
interviewing
yeah.
you, but you
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
interview them. You need to come in with some real hard questions and see how they respond.
Oh, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you might walk out like, I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And
absolutely. It is a two-way street. It's not just
mhm,
them interviewing you to see if you're a
right,
fit. You need to
right.
interview them and see if you're a fit. I had a client who had applied to one role and the recruiter called her back and he was telling her about the interview process and he was like, "Yeah, we have 6 rounds of interviews and this is, what we do through the interviews." And so she was like, "I don't know what to do." And I was like, "Well, it's your life and your time." I said, "Do you have the bandwidth to
For
participate in
six
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 rounds.
rounds.
rounds of interviews, and they're not all on the same day. So you're working a job. That means you
Oh,
have to
yeah.
take time off from your job. We're in Atlanta, so
Hmm.
it's not like you're going to just take an hour out. You have to take probably about 3 to 4 hours off of your job, which runs into your PTO bank. You know,
Right.
and these are all face-to-face interviews. When after COVID, Zoom works very well. You
Right,
don't need to
right.
see me face to face, maybe but one time. And
Hmm.
so, you're bringing me on site for 6 interviews. What does that say about the company? And is that an organization that you want
I
to
think
work
that's
for?
a sign of toxicity. It's
It could be.
already starting off
Yeah.
bad.
I don't know that it's
Yeah.
toxicity. I think sometimes it
Really?
can be you have too many hands in the pot that
I
think
was just
they
about to
have,
say.
that
Hmm.
think they need a opinion on a candidate,
Hmm.
which I don't think you need. I'm all for collaboration. If it's a position that's going to be working with other departments, that's fine. But you can do a panel interview with, 3 or 4 people for those stakeholders that they collaborate with. But when you're talking about having a decision in the hiring process and if this candidate is going to be hired or not, they don't need that much control. That decision
Right.
should
Right,
be
right,
to the hiring manager. And we're seeing
right.
it now where, you're having all of these interviews and everybody has a say on whether or not this person should be hired. That's too many hands in the pot. You don't need that.
Yeah, yeah, because one person's bias,
Oh
like,
yeah.
Hmm.
didn't like that dress
Right.
or don't really like those people,
Hmm.
Hmm.
can then infect everybody
Absolutely.
else.
Absolutely.
Years ago, I was asked to interview for a position as a therapist at a drug treatment um, program. And I'm sure Candy knows what I'm talking about. Uh, and the the hiring manager was like, the job's yours,
Hmm.
job's yours. Okay, great. I just want you to meet like the heads of the departments. Okay. So
Right.
I go in thinking the job is mine. The people treated me so badly in the interview. I
Wow.
reached out to the hiring manager that was like, the job's yours. And I
Hmm.
said, I don't want to work for those people. I will
Yeah.
not put
Yeah.
myself in that situation.
Yeah.
They
And see,
were
that's a
so,
situation where that was positive for you because, yeah, you got to see the people that you were working with. And if they're
yes,
treating you like this and you don't even have the job yet, what
Right.
are they going to treat
right.
you like when you start working for them?
Yes, yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. And sometimes we just need a job. We just need a
Hmm.
paycheck, right?
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we'll settle for the
Hmm.
positions, even though we don't really feel great about it.
Right.
Um, but and I'm not going to tell people to pass up an opportunity for a paycheck, but just to please do your homework, know what you're getting into before you get
Absolutely.
into it.
Yeah, because you do not want to be in an environment where it's toxic and you hate going to work every day. But you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah, there are we just need a check, we need to keep the lights on and pay the bills. And so you just want to do that. But you don't want to sacrifice your mental health for that.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
There you
We
go.
did an episode on that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Belay, what are some of the things that self-defeating chatter we have in our head that you see common in women?
We just talked about I'm too old.
Too old?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, too old. They want somebody younger. Um, Another one, which is very surprising. Okay, I'm too expensive. No, you're not too expensive.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
mhm,
After all you've done and been, we are not too expensive, believe you me. But the biggest one is that I'm too old, or
mm.
oh, another one is as far as technology, we're not as up to date
Oh,
on the new
yeah,
technology as younger
yeah,
people would be. So we
yeah.
lack in that area. And I'm like, but your brain still works, right? You still have a
Right.
functioning brain and you're able to learn stuff. Go to YouTube
Yeah.
University and learn whatever you think it is that you're lacking.
You know, this negative self-talk, as a therapist, I have seen it, address it, and I think it can come from many places, like the way you were raised, the
Hmm.
self-confidence that you have, or how you were treated. Were parents verbally abusive and dismissive, and the things that you encounter throughout the course of your life that can feel like that can chip away a little bit at you. So we go in like, I'm never going to get this job,
Hmm.
right? Like, I'm
Hmm.
not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm too old, I'm too young. I'm just, and that sort of, and you mentioned mindset. That
Hmm.
sort of mindset is not going to come across in a positive way. It's not
No,
going
it
to come
doesn't.
across as a strong, confident woman,
Right.
in that interview, because they're going to see that. And so
Absolutely.
how do you have the self-awareness to recognize that negative self-talk
Hmm.
that's being whispered into this ear, and to replace that with the confident voice in the other ear?
Yeah.
So I think that requires, some processing and personal reflection, to understand the root of the negativity, and then what you're going to do to break that cycle.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, that's the one thing that I enjoy about hypnosis, because what we don't understand or what we don't think about, I think everybody has some level of self doubt in their life. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I think the differentiation point is how we see that and how it shows up. But everything that occurs in our life from the moment we come out of the womb, we hold that in our subconscious. I tell
Uh-huh.
people when I do speaking engagements, I'm like, think about when you're born. The first thing that happens when you're born, your doctor hits you on the butt and you start crying and screaming. And so, as a baby, we don't know how to process that. And your subconscious doesn't process positive things and negative things. So, in your mind, your subconscious processes hit, yell, scream. And it processes that in your mind. So if you then go into a relationship, an abusive relationship where you're hit, that film starts playing back in your mind, and that's what you start seeing.
Mm.
It's definitely something that you have to be at a point where you can be self-aware and acknowledge that nobody's perfect. Um, I work with a lot of women into I don't like to get into, I'm this way because, this is what happened in my childhood, or, my
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
did that. Okay, let's get over that. What can we do today to bring you
Mm-hmm.
to this point? Because all of our parents did the best that they knew how with what they had. There's no manual on how to be the best parent. Everybody's just trying to get through this thing called life. And so let's find out, are there any triggers that are bringing up those thoughts? And then how do we work through those? There, for some people, one of the things that I like so well about Mary Jane with Gabrielle Union is that she did the affirmations and she had them like all over her
The Post-its. Yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing about affirmations are, you start believing them. So if you start saying affirmations, I am worthy, I deserve this, you start believing that. And then when you start believing that, it starts showing in how you present to the world. And so that's what we have to work on and get through. And so, yeah, you're right. Going through like whatever that process is going to be for you, figuring out what works for you. Affirmations may work well for some people. Journaling and self-reflection may work well for some people. There may be some other tools that work well, and you just got to figure out what works well for you. I think everyone can do very well from having a supportive female group. But I think that it's important that you have a female group that's not gonna be your yes man. That's not what you
Yeah.
need. You need somebody
Yeah.
that's gonna call you on your bullshit, and they're gonna call you on your bullshit in love. It's not to destroy you.
Yeah.
It's to
Right,
help
right.
you, be a better person. I think we can all benefit from that because a lot of times, I know I can even talk about myself. I've done and I've said things that I haven't even thought about. And then somebody has come up to me and said something about it later. And I've looked at it differently and I've seen the situation differently that I wouldn't have even thought about if that person hadn't brought it up. And so that's the benefit of having people that are going to call you on your stuff and they're going to call you in love. And you have to be willing to take that in and think about it and not take it as not being a defensive mechanism, but being
Yeah.
more of a growth mindset mechanism. Like this is something to make me better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you incorporate hypnotherapy in the work that you do?
Yeah. So I actually have a program that we work through depending on what the client needs. And so most of my programs are anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And we have a series of things that we do. So during my first intake session, I kind of go through what are the issues that we want to try to address. And then we have activities and things that we do throughout that process. And depending on what it is, I typically have about 2 to 3 hypnosis sessions worked within that program where we go through hypnosis and I do scripts to reframe whatever that thinking is in their mind that we're trying to, abolish or eliminate.
Is the things that you're trying to eliminate, is it past negative experiences from workplaces?
It's a variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about, being in a situation where you think they're not going to hire me. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have a limiting belief of I'm not going to get hired for this job, regardless of whatever the other sub things are, I don't have enough experience, I'm too old. We're not looking at that. But the basic thing is you have an issue, a limiting belief with self-worth. And so I will then do a hypnosis script that will work around and target self-worth and being worthy and eliminating those limiting beliefs that are in your self-conscious. And based on the work and the responses that we've had before we do the hypnosis session, I can kind of see where those doubts are coming around. Because it's so interesting, how limiting beliefs show up. You can have a woman who is a great mother, can run a wonderful household, but then she doesn't believe that she deserves a promotion at her job.
Right, right.
Why is this any different? Like you're running an
Yeah,
organization, your household is your
right.
organization, like you're keeping your kids alive. Why is that any different? And why doesn't it translate over into this situation? And so, those are things that we're talking through and working through the responses and the questions that they're going through. So that's kind of how it works.
Wow. So, in regards to the hypnotherapy, do you find that people need to be open-minded and available to this? Because I know, we've been to those hypno comedy shows,
Right.
On
and
Sunset. Yeah.
a bunch of people go
Pat
up
Collins,
there,
the
Yeah.
and
hypnotist.
some people are susceptible, some people are not. So I've been under twice. I know that I will go there easily, but in your program, do you find like, oh, this person isn't ready to do this or isn't making themselves available to do this?
Yeah. And so, I mean, we talk about that in the intake and what the process
Okay.
needs to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to go through and tell them what hypnosis is and what it's not. There is a form of hypnosis that is entertainment. Absolutely is. Nothing wrong with that. That's not what we're doing in a clinical practice in this setting.
Okay.
And also, one of the other things that I have to dispute is, there are some people who think, oh, well, if I go under hypnosis, you're going to unleash,
Tell
all
me
these
to,
crazy things. No, that doesn't happen in hypnosis either. You are always awake. All hypnosis is an advanced state of relaxation. You are always aware. Anything that is not congruent with your mind, you're not going to accept that suggestion. So
Okay.
if you're under and I say, okay, once I bring you out, I want you to leave and then go jump off of a bridge. If that's not congruent with you, you're not going to accept that suggestion and you're not going to go jump off of a bridge. Even though our parents would, used to tell us, well, if they go do it, does that mean that you can go do it? Yeah, that doesn't work in hypnosis. So yeah, your mind is a strong enough thing that it can choose what to accept and what not to accept. But you definitely have to be willing to be open to it. And so one of the things that, we always do in hypnosis and that they teach us is that we have to get permission from the person before, we start a hypnosis session. And that's also a trigger telling their subconscious that they are willing to accept, going under this and reframing their thoughts. So,
and I know that hypnotherapy is used in a lot of therapeutic settings, right? As I could become certified and use it in my clinical practice, psychiatrist, what have you. And that just is another tool in the toolkit to utilize to help like understand maybe the root cause of some of these negative thoughts about yourself or experiences, so on and so forth. So I know how incredibly valuable it can be. And it's interesting to couple that with, your career, finding a job, and how those things can impact that. But through this hypnotherapy process, you can see some real positive results.
Absolutely. And you see it pretty much immediately, like unlike some other therapeutic things. There are so many studies and reports of things like people who have been able to stop smoking. That's something very simple with hypnotherapy. And it's not even that, the script for stop smoking is not that you're taking the urge to smoke, but you're replacing those thoughts in their minds with healthier thoughts so that they don't want to smoke, which is what people don't see. But, there have been success with people like immediately they go through a session and they're stop smoking. People lose weight with hypnosis, and it's not that, we're giving them some kind of magic pill. I don't know if you guys can see my little crumb snatcher. He's so
yes. I was about to ask who is in your lap.
Yeah, he needs to be introduced.
Losing weight, it's about making healthier choices and getting up and moving your body and reframing your conscious for that. But yeah, this is Bullion. He is, oh my God, he is such a bully.
Hold on, Bullion, like the cube.
Like the gold bullion cube, not the seasoning cube.
Not the chicken stock.
But the gold, the precious metal.
Oh, that's hysterical. I was thinking soup base.
Everybody does. Everybody does it. It's so funny because, when I first got him that's what my sister said. And all the dogs that I've had, I've started their names with B, for Billé because I didn't have children. And so when I came up with Bullion, she was like the seasoning cube. And I was like, no, like a gold bullion bar. I was like, people need to elevate their words. Like they're two different kind of bullions.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny. Okay.
So yeah, that's my little crumb snatcher.
Billé, can you share some of your success stories that you've had through your coaching and how you've helped people overcome things to reach for something bigger and better?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have like one of my top best um success stories that I always talk about. I have someone that I worked with, and basically we had started working. This person was in a entry level job with a corporation, and now they've gone up to be in the C-suite of their organization.
Mm,
And
Wow.
so, like, that's just like the top of one of my success stories because, and it wasn't that this person had a lot of limiting beliefs about not being able to do the job, but it was more so being able to see what they could achieve.
mm,
Hmm.
And
mm-hmm,
every time there was a promotion, okay, I got this one. What's the next step I need to look towards? And how do I position myself to make sure that I'm the top candidate in this role? And
mm,
so that's one of the ones that I talk about a lot. I've had success stories, with people being in a field of many, and they'll get to the interview process and they'll say, well, we've interviewed 30 people for this job, and we'd like to offer you the job. And that feels great to know that in all of these people,
right.
30 is a lot of people that you could be
Yeah.
interviewing for a role, and I'm the person that you selected. So obviously there has to be something about me that's worthy. And then working with those clients to make sure that they see and they understand you are what you say you are. You're worthy of this position. Like, you competed against 29 other individuals and you rose to the top. So what is it about you that allowed you to rise to the top, and how do we make sure that you continue to present that to the next job and the next one and the next one?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that struck me was the person who rose to the C-suite, but said, "Oh, a promotion. Okay, what's my next step for the
Hmm.
next one?"
Hmm.
Hmm.
And to kind of just be thinking, like, this is great, but I know I don't want to stay here forever. I'm going to be working towards something else. And
Hmm.
kind of having that in the back of your mind as you go about your everyday business, doing the work. So the next, an opportunity arises, you're ready to go for that.
Yeah, and really, when you
Um,
think about women our age, that's not really something that we've been taught to do. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you get that job, but then we're not forward thinking about what's the next step,
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
what does the next position look like. We're like, okay, we got this job, let's just see here, and maybe they'll give me an increase in a year, and we're not really looking to think, where do I want to go next? So that's really a muscle that we have to work on, especially being
Yeah.
a woman of a certain age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. My sister, she started off at her organization as a lowly little therapist.
I'm sure she wasn't a lowly
And
little therapist.
and she was in people's houses getting bitten by dogs and being
Oh
exposed to
no.
scabies and all types of things. And in a very short period of time, Judy, can you just kind of talk a little bit about your trajectory, how you started and how you moved up and how long it took?
So yes. So the bread and butter of this organization are the therapists that do the direct services. So that's where I started. And it's an amazing job, great experience, but hard work. Physically, when I'm being
Hmm.
bitten, documentation, the whole kit and caboodle. Um, and I knew that I did not want to stay there. And there were times where I just thought, I'm too old for this shit. I've
Yeah.
got to move on. I do not see myself in this forever. So I moved into another position where I was still acting as a therapist, but clients were coming to me for a very specific program. I no longer had to drive around and go into homes and so on
Hmm.
and so forth. Um, then I so now I've gotten that promotion, and there was another position that came up, and it was a supervisory position. But most of our supervisory positions require experience. Like you have to have been a supervisor for X amount of years,
And
and
how do
this
you
is
get that?
and how do you get that unless you
Yeah.
get a chance?
Right.
So my agency does have opportunities to be supervisors without the experience, because I
Hmm.
wasn't supervising therapists at that
Hmm.
time, supervising bachelor's level folks.
Right.
So that was a natural step for me to take. And after working in that position for a few years, then I was supervising clinical staff. So when you kind of map it out, it makes sense the way that trajectory. And then finally, the position I'm in is not really clinical at all. I'm the director of equity and inclusion for my agency. But also, I think my agency, seeing my commitment and my dedication to the work, to the people, it made sense that I then move into this other role. And so that was my journey. I feel incredibly fortunate to have had it, and I know I have such amazing support from my colleagues, my boss, so on and so forth. So that was my
And
my little journey.
how long did it take you?
Between the time I started to this current director position, that was 5 years.
Oh, that's not
Yeah,
that's not
that
bad
I
at
mean,
all.
Yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
just want, yeah, I just want to go back to when Judy was applying to graduate school and she had her interview and she's like, "Why would they choose me? I don't think you can do it." Were you in the parking lot? And I was
Yes.
like, "Why
Yes.
wouldn't they choose you?
Right.
Yeah.
You have 3 kids. Of course you're going to do." I was the cheerleader.
Yes, you
And
were.
I was like, "Why doesn't my sister recognize that she's a badass?" And I'm pumping her up. And the thing is, that's the thing about having people in your corner.
Right.
Like, if Judy applied to be a coach of a basketball team, I'd be like, "I don't think that's in your wheelhouse." But you have to have people who believe in you and know what you're capable of so you can achieve that.
Mhm.
Judy went from literally being bitten to being in the suite to being
Yeah.
and it, like, I'm so proud of her, but that's it. It's not just unique to her. I feel like if you study and you work and you dedicate yourself, you should be able to achieve that. And if you're someplace where that is not being
Yes.
appreciated,
Yeah.
you need to get out and you have to
Absolutely.
go where you're
Yeah.
appreciated.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. I definitely agree.
And whenever I meet with our new hires, I'm meeting with them tomorrow. Whenever I talk to them, I always share with them there are other opportunities for you beyond the one that you're starting at. So be mindful of that because,
Mhm.
my agency really promotes growth. So I just like to support others the way I was supported.
Yeah, and realize that, you know, be open to it. Again, we came through a time where, you go and you get this job and you kind of stay there. I think one of the advantages of working for, companies who really value, we promote from within, is that if you have an interest to do something other than what you were hired for, if you have the competencies in other areas for that role, let's see what we can do to get you ready to take that role that's totally different. You came in, let's say you came in as a therapist and then you decided you wanted to be the IT director because you loved working with computers and, you had that technical mindset. What kind of projects could we put you on to build that up so that when the next role comes, you'll be ready
Yeah.
for that. And don't think that just because you have to come in one role, that that's where you have to stay your entire
Right.
career.
Right.
Give yourself
And
the freedom
or
and the permission to
yeah.
say, I'm going to do something different.
And you want to look for organizations that offer professional development.
Oh,
So if you
absolutely.
wanted, so if you want to do IT, we'll cover tuition so you can work towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always tell people, like when we're talking about, because I'll also help with salary negotiation. And so I always tell people one of the caveats that they need to think about when you're looking at your salary for professional development. If you're working for a company who says, we'll give you tuition reimbursement or, we'll pay for you to go to conferences in your field. Well, do I get to do that on work time or do I have to use my PTO? Because I don't want to use my PTO. And most
Yeah.
people don't even think about that. And then once you get into the company and their policies probably say you have to use your PTO. Well, that's not really fair because
Yeah.
I'm doing professional development to be a better employee. Why do I have to use
Mm-hmm.
my personal time off to do
Right.
something that's going to value the company? And so I always, point that out to candidates when you're looking at salary negotiations. That's something that you need to look at because PTO can be negotiated. Those professional
Yeah.
conferences that you need to go to can be negotiated so that you're not taking away from your PTO time to go to those.
Right.
And that's something that you need to be mindful of also.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, Billé, I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
You're more
It's
than
been
welcome.
it's enlightening
Mm-hmm.
to hear your perspective on what you've done and how you're able to help others. So I just, really appreciate you being here and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you so much for
And
having me.
how can people reach you if they want to be coached? They don't have to live in Atlanta to be
No, they do
coached,
not have
correct?
to live in Atlanta.
So how
Correct.
do people
They
reach
do not
you?
have to live in Atlanta. And so you can find me on all social media and platforms, but my website is also my name. So it's www.BilléFrazier, BILLEFrazier.com. And if you go to www.followtheleadher.com, it takes you to the same website. So they can always find me there.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you so
again.
much.
Thank you. Enjoy talking to both of you. And now I finally get to put a
Yes.
face with Judy because I hear about Judy so much.
Yeah, here she is.
Here
All
I
right.
am.
Thank you guys so much.
Okay.
Stay
Thank
So
safe.
you.
we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Two Sisters of a Certain Age, Conversations with a Therapist and a Doctor. Candy, how can folks reach us?
We are on Facebook at two Sisters of a Certain Age. We're on YouTube, two Soka, and you can write us at two Soka podcast at gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
No Longer Network.